let's have a discussion about religion and the precious nature of life. It provides us all with the opportunity to explore what we stand for and the principles we hold dear. It provides us counsel in our time of adversity and clarity when we seek a prosperous future. According to my friends over at Gallup News, they found that today 47% of Americans identify as being religious, while another 33% say that they identify as being spiritual and but not religious. 2% in this survey say that they identify as both. If you're someone who values religion as a major tenet or core principle of how you live your life, then the conversation I had with Desiree Taylor may be of interest to you. She's among the American population who live with mid-hearing loss, who are 12 and older, which affects approximately 37.1 million people. More than half of those Americans, 20.8 million people, are affected with mid-hearing loss if you are 60 years or older. This according to the National Council on Aging. For Taylor, she's a first-time author, a mother to 2 young adults, and a speaker, as well as a mentor to those who seek out her counsel. She's deaf and has 2 bilateral cochlear implants to help with her hearing, and she's a fierce advocate for individuals with disabilities and believes that we all have to do our part to level the playing field to ensure that that segment of our population has an equal shot at prosperity in all aspects of life. She joined me this week to discuss her new book, Created to Relate, Living Beyond Religion, and the lessons she hopes that people take from her life journey, her book, and her mentorship. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So Desiree, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited about learning about all about your life story, my friend. Great to see you, and thank you as always for a few minutes.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Desiree, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you about your upbringing and how it formed you and to the person you are today, because it provided you some principles that you still live your life by today. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by asking you about where you come from and what values that are important to you, my friend.
Okay, well, I've grown up in Westerly, Rhode Island for my whole life, and I grew up going to church. And so I've always been in church as I've grown up. And I have a mom and dad. I had both my parents at home. I had a younger sister and an older sister. We were a blended family because my mom had my older sister. And it was, I don't know, we grew up in a very interesting household that we didn't talk a lot about different things, and it was kind of a very controlling atmosphere a lot of the time. Um, and I had my hearing loss too. I found out about my hearing loss when I was about 3 years old. They noticed things, but my mom was deaf too. So my mom was deaf and my dad was hearing. So we had a mix of things in that too. My sister was hearing, so it was just me and my mom. And I got my first hearing aid when I was 9 years old. And my sister was hearing, so it was just kind of complicated in the household. My dad didn't really learn sign language, so that was tough because it was hard to communicate with all of us. Um, so I grew up um, dealing with that. Sorry, I'm so like,
No, no, you're doing great.
um, so that was kind of my upbringing. Really, it was just with my family and in church. There wasn't a whole lot to tell, growing up. They stayed together, but it was kind of crazy in the household sometimes. Um, so I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up your hearing loss, and I'm curious to ask you about how you dealt with adversity, and what do you think about the concept of resilience, and how did your hearing loss teach you to be resilient? What are your thoughts there?
Mm. Well, yeah, for me, because I didn't have a lot of, there wasn't a lot of advocacy for me. So for me, like when I went to school, and of course the ADA wasn't available back then. So um, they just kind of stuck me in front of the classroom. So I got stuck in front of the classroom, and I get my first hearing aid, and the kids were making fun of me all the time. So I threw my hearing aid in the locker and went and sat in the classroom and realized I couldn't understand the teacher. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I would stare at the teacher, and that's how I learned how to lip read. So this kind of taught me how to find strategies for those things. I've had to learn how to do that for myself a lot. So I think that does, as terrible as that is, it's really helped me to learn how to find different strategies and um, to not give up very easy. I persevere a lot. If someone says I can't do something, I fight that a lot. So I think that if I didn't have the hearing loss, I may not be that way.
Yeah, and I know that you became a single mom at 18, and you had to deal with that. And we talked about your church upbringing, and I know that it provided you a sense of insecurity and low self-esteem, and you dealt with depression and anxiety as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, how do you think you overcame those challenges and became a better person, or how did you learn from those adversities in your life?
Um, well, it was a process for me. I had to unlearn a lot of things because I grew up in the church, but it was a very legalistic and religious kind of place. And as we talk, well, I don't have a bad taste for church. It's just the legalism when everything is about having to be perfect and looking right and doing all those things. And when you don't look that way or do those things, it makes you feel like you're kind of a failure and fall short. So I really did struggle with a lot of insecurity and especially and with my hearing loss added to it, it didn't help any for me. Um so I had to unlearn a lot of things. I prayed a lot, and I thankfully I have a husband who helps me through those things. He's a great man, and he's helped me walk through some of the issues that I've had. I got into a church community later on in life when my kids were a little bit older, and I've gotten a lot of good friends from there. They listened to me. They've helped me. I have a friend who's a counselor, so I've had a lot of support that way along the way. Um, and I've done a lot of inward work. That was the thing too. Like you can have those things, but unless you're willing to do the work inside, it doesn't always happen. So I've had to, ask God where the roots are of the issues that I have, to really look at my issues and to work through them. And it's been a hard process, but it's been a good process. And I feel like I'm in a much better place. Um, yeah, I have a lot of strategies that I've learned, as I've learned with making strategies with my hearing loss. I've learned with the depression and then the anxiety too. And my relationship with Jesus has helped with that too. So the mix is so important, who we're allowing into our lives too, to say things to us, who we have as friends and who we surround ourselves with really makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and Desiree, I'm a huge believer in the power of building social capital. And I know for you, building a relationship with your husband and with God really has allowed you to express yourself in a new way, my friend. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the importance of building relationships and how your relationship with Jesus and God has really helped you to sort of transform your life, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Um, yeah, it's been pivotal for me. I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't have that relationship with Jesus. And I've had, by going back and unlearning and then really looking at God's word and being in prayer differently and just having a different type of church community around me. Um, I've gotten to know who God really is, and who I am to him, and he shows me what I need to do, or he puts the right people in my life, and um, it's just been amazing to me. It helps me deal and work with the pain that I have from the past things, and it brings so much healing to life, and it helps me be able to be who I am better for myself, for my family, and for other people.
Yeah, and just before I ask you about your new book, I'm curious to ask you about your message to other people who really may be struggling with their own faith journey and the power of leading into their faith. What would you tell them about the rewards or the benefits that come to really believing in their own faith journey? What are your thoughts there?
Mm. Well, I think it's important that you get into the right place. I do think unlearning the things that we've been taught to really see. I think it's important to know the truth. And I think a lot of us have been taught things that aren't really true, or we've been taught things like our value is based in what we do or don't do, or behaviors or different things like that, instead of really learning who God is and what the Bible really says. I think in some denominations and religions, someone else is teaching you. And I think that when Jesus came and he died for us, God opened the door for a relationship with him through Jesus. We don't need other people to do that for us. And I think that's a big thing for me. It's a personal relationship. And I think when people really understand that and they have a personal relationship with Jesus, it will change everything for them. And I think so many of us have come out of like legalistic places, and it's turned us away from even wanting to know about that. And so I'm really hoping that with the book that people see how God has done that in my life and will help them in theirs and free them a little bit more in their own
Yeah,
life.
yeah, you led into my next question. I was going to ask you about your book, Created to Relate, Living Beyond Religion, and I guess I would want you to expand on why you wrote it and what you're hoping people get from the book itself? What are the key takeaways you're hoping people get from the book?
Mm. Well, it was interesting because when my son turned 17, I realized that the kids were growing up, and I was more of a stay-at-home mom. I did work at the school for a little bit. Um, but I began thinking about what I was going to do next, what would be next. And God reminded me of I used to love to write, loved writing in the journals, loved writing cards to people, and writing has always been something that I can do that my hearing doesn't interfere with. So I started blogging and getting a website and doing all that stuff. And then I started dreaming about writing a book. And they ask you, what are you an expert in? Which I didn't really feel like I was an expert in much. But I thought over my life, what is it that I have that could benefit other people? And the book, actually, I thought the book was going to be more about other people, other people's stories. And it ended up being more about my own journey, and then giving other people ways to apply that in their own lives. So um, I think that what I want people to take away from it is, and I've had people say this to me, like they didn't know that any of these things had affected them. But when they read the book, they really resonated with that. So it's helping bring that out in other people so they see some of the struggles that they've had, maybe in a different light, and then be able to move forward in that, um, move past those into that relationship with Christ, and to be free from the things that they've been in bondage to, or the things that have held them back or kept them depressed or anxious or whatever it might be for them. So that's my biggest heart. I want to see people free from the struggles. It's taken me so long to work through so much of this stuff. So I'd like to see other people be able to do that now so that they can live life so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Desiree, I'm curious as a parent yourself. I'm curious the role you think that religion should play in raising kids today. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think being in a good church is important. If you have a good God believing church, but I also think that you have to be wise in where you're raising your children when it comes to religion, because I almost think that it's worse if kids are raised in a place where it's just ritualistic, legalistic thing, because I've seen so many worse things come out of that than if they weren't anywhere at all, honestly. Um, but I do think that raising children knowing God and who Jesus is important, because I think it helps in everything. I mean, it helps in their relationships with other kids, because the world is awful, really. And I don't know how people survive it without God, actually. So I think being in the right place is important, but I think you have to be wise in that. I wouldn't just say, yeah, just to raise them in religion, but to raise them in a good God believing church where they get the truth is important.
And I know, my friend, that we share a mutual passion for advocating on behalf of individuals with disabilities. And I know with your hearing loss, that's important to you. And I myself have cerebral palsy. So I'm curious, where does your passion for advocating for folks with disabilities come from? And why is that important to you?
Mm. Well, that cause is important to me because I know what it's like to be a person with a disability. I worked at a school um, as a special education paraprofessional for several years. I've worked with different children with different special needs, and worked with their parents, and parents and the kids both need support. And even with the ADA Act, I don't see, things are a little better, but I don't think they're that great. Honestly, I've dealt with a lot of things with the medical field as a deaf person, so I have a passion for the deaf culture and those with hearing loss, because that's a very divided culture. Because I have the cochlear implants, some deaf people won't talk to me because of that. So there's a division in the deaf culture. I love to bridge the gap there because I think that's important. That we shouldn't be divided. We should be helping one another. Um, but I think that no one else is advocating. I think we have to advocate, and those of us who have had a disability or who have a disability and who live that life, um, can be voices for those people who don't have a voice in their life. I had to learn how to advocate for myself, and that was hard. But now I've got a pretty loud voice when it comes to all of this, and I want to be helpful to other people to be a voice for them too, and help them find their voice of advocacy. And I actually have I have a page on my website dedicated to this specifically. I've been sharing other people's stories on there. And want to continue to do that so that people understand too. People don't understand people with disabilities unless they know someone or they know someone who has a disability. They tend to not understand, and then they just kind of stay away or they won't do anything. So I'm hoping to teach people about different disabilities and people with different disabilities, so maybe that they'll feel more equipped and educated to help someone.
Yeah, and Desiree, we're having this discussion right in the middle of national uh, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So I'm curious about your thoughts on why it's important to continue to advocate for the employment rights of folks with disabilities, because that's certainly an important message and aspect of this fight, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we need to advocate for rights in every area for the people with disabilities. You would think I get a little frustrated because you would think with the laws in place we would see something better right now, but we don't.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what sort of an example do you hope that you're you're exhibiting for your children and for the people that are um, inspired by your message? I'm wondering your motto in life, and whether you have a motto in life that you stick by when things are good and when they're bad as well. So, what is your motto in life, my friend?
Hmm. I don't know if I have a motto in life, but I think when people leave me, who have been with me, when they leave me, I want them to feel like they were seen, loved, and known, that they knew they were listened to, cared for, and because I think that's what people remember. They don't remember a lot of the big things, but they remember how you made them feel. And I want people to know that they were loved by me and cared for by me, um, and that I valued them. So I think that's my biggest motto in life. That's my goal everywhere I go.
Yeah, and I know that mentoring is also important to you, and passing on the lessons that you've learned in your own personal life. So I'm curious, why is mentoring others important to you, and how do you hope others sort of pay it forward from a mentoring perspective? What are your thoughts there?
Well, well, I was kind of lonely. When I was a teenager, a young adult, I didn't really have anyone mentoring me. And when I think back, I think about what I was missing, and there were so many seasons in life that I went through that I didn't know what was going on or what was happening. And I didn't have anyone to really talk to. Um, and that gives me a passion to be there for other people that way. I do have a discipleship group at church with the young adult women. So, and I have quite a few one-on-one mentoring. Um, I mentor a few young adult women one-on-one. And you can see the difference that it makes in their life, and it makes a difference for me too. I have more mentors in my life now as I go through different things as a woman, or um, people I can talk to about different things in the season of life. And it's just so helpful to me. And I think it just helps me live life better. And I want to be that for somebody else.
Yeah, and Desiree, I want to talk to you about the power of sort of your writing and why writing is sort of a passion for you and how it helps you to uplift others while also uplifting yourself. So what sense of personal fulfillment or passion do you get from writing, and how do you hope it uplifts others, my friend?
Mm. Well, writing really is therapy for me. It's always has been. In my journal writing, whether I'm writing a blog post, it helps me work things out. So for me, it's been therapy. It's been encouraging to me. And I've also seen it with other people. When people read my writing, the things that they share with me, how it's helped them, it encourages them, it helps them work through things. And I love writing cards. I love encouraging other people through my writing. So I see a lot of that in my blogging and in just in personal cards and different things that I write.
Yeah, and I'm curious to ask you about sort of the power of vulnerability and the importance of being authentically vulnerable in life. Because I think if we pull back the layers of, armor and protection, we really have the possibility to really be our authentic self. So tell me about the power of vulnerability and the role it plays in your life, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's a great question, actually, because I grew up in a place where we shoved our feelings down. We didn't talk about anything, and I was such an odd girl. I wanted to understand my feelings. I wanted to talk about things, and no one would. So that has been a passion for me, because I think when we aren't authentic or transparent or anything like that, and we just keep everything in there, that's why people struggle so much, I think, with anxiety and depression and the low self esteem, because we're stuffing it there. And I also find that when I am vulnerable, when I am authentic, people trust me and they feel free to share their authentic and transparent places, and we help each other in that. And I think it's a way of loving each other too. I mean, when we're authentic, we say to other people, "I care about you, but I trust you." I think it builds relationships too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Desiree, I'm curious to ask you about sort of the personal gratification you get when you lift up the spirits of other people and really provide them the structure or the permission structure to be their authentic selves by lifting up the spirits that live within them, my friend. So, what sort of personal satisfaction did you get by helping to uplift the spirits of others? Tell me more, my friend.
Mm. Well, actually, this has been doing these things and being that to other people has helped me with my depression. Because when we focus on other people, it takes our eyes off ourselves, and depression can be such an inward battle. So, with other people can be just simple stuff. Just listening to someone. I have friends that tell me, even though I'm deaf, they say I'm the best listener to them. Sometimes people just need to know that you care and just to listen, to pray with them, to talk through things together, to write a card. You see people, their demeanor and you can see their spirits being lifted and encouraged. And that just, it brings joy to me because I love being a part of helping someone feel better and be better. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, my friend. And I know that you've been married to your husband, Dante, my friend, for 26 years, and you've got two grown children together. And I'm curious, what do you think is the key to forming a healthy and happy and respectful marriage, my friend? What do you think is the key there?
Okay, so I have to tell you, my husband's name is Dwayne. I just want to make
Dwayne,
sure.
sorry, yeah.
No, that's okay. Um, but there's three things. The first one's commitment. We came into this committed that with a commitment not to get divorced. So it was a commitment that we made to one another. I mean, there are always things that happen, and I don't want to put that out as a complete whatever, because people go through things that needs to happen. But for us, we came into it with that commitment with one another, that commitment to work through things even though they were hard. Um, Communication's the second thing. Communication is huge. I mean, between just communication in general and being two different people and my hearing loss, communication has had to be a big thing. We've had to work through a lot of misunderstandings, whether it's been through my hearing or just different personalities. Um, but to have good intentional communication and intentionality too, to be intentional in hearing one another, listening to one another, to loving each other in the ways that they feel loved, and intentionality to work through the hard things, even when it's not easy. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And Desiree, I know that you're empty nesters now, but you've had experience raising children, obviously, and with the way the world is sort of divided today, I'm wondering your thoughts on how to raise kids with the appropriate level of values and morals that allow them to uh, think for themselves and stand on their own two feet, my friends. So, what do you think is the key to raising kids successfully in today's society?
and that's such a great question, and I feel like I can answer that so much better now than I could when the kids were little. Um, but I think it's important to let our children know that everyone's human. That we all make mistakes, and to be okay with that, because sometimes there's a lot of competitiveness, there's a lot of one upping other people, or squishing someone for the sake of your own success. I think to be vulnerable, like we've talked about, and to be humble, you know, um, to see one another as equal and not as, one better than the other. That commitment to loving them, and helping them through different times in life. I think with the way things are today and people having to work so much just to survive, being present with them isn't as important, or people aren't able to be present in the way that they need to for the kids. I think having open communication and always being available to them, that even if you're at work, just to making yourselves available to your children at all times, um, giving them a place to be real and to be approachable for them. Again, just like with the mentoring thing, sharing our wisdom, the things that we've done in life, teaching them through our own experiences, and being consistent, in who we are and consistent with them. And I think when we teach them those things, um, and we live those things out to them, that more than likely they take that with them. Because even though we've made mistakes as parents, I do see some of the things that we did well with them, and my children are 30 and 25 now. So I see those qualities in them. So I think if we have those kind of qualities within ourselves and we teach those to them, that will carry out in their own lives for them.
Yeah, and Desiree, one of the things I wanted to ask you is about creating what I call more bridges of unity. Desiree, I started this podcast 4.5 years ago because I looked at the world and I said to myself, there has to be more that bring this together than working to bring us apart. So I'm curious, when you look at the landscape of society today, what do you think is the key to creating more bridges of unity?
Um, I think some of it just starts in how we treat each other. I think it's just simple sometimes, like to treat each other as valuable human beings that God created each one of us uniquely and personally, and to see value in one another and to treat each other that way. I think that that's probably the key. It seems like such a simple thing, but we don't do that for one. Everyone's always on the offensive, you know? To not live on the offensive all the time or to be offended all the time, um, to see each other, the good in each other, and not just, I don't know, through an agenda or our own, lens. I think if we just loved each other a little better, just and saw value in one another and treated each other that way, we'd be a whole lot better off and there would be a lot more unity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Desiree, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with the concept of building a legacy and building an example for others to follow. I am a huge believer that we're all put on earth to sort of put our fingerprints of difference into the sand, my friend. So when you look at the totality of your life and what you hope it stands for, what do you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined by, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Mm. It's interesting because I haven't thought about that completely. I think about what I have thought about it more the older I get, because I just turned 50. So I'm thinking more and more, what do I want to leave behind? And I think it's just like I said before, I want people, I want people to see Jesus in me. I do. And I want people to see his characteristics in me, and to know that he's real because of how I love other people. So everything I do, I want to be a reflection of him, but I want people to know that they're valued and that they're loved and cared for. And I want people to leave my presence and my blog and anything I do, I want them to leave a better person because they were around me or because they knew me. And I think when I die, that's what I want. I want people to feel like they're better people because they knew me and read my writing or heard a podcast or something. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I have to tell you, you look fabulous for just turning 50, okay?
Thank you.
So tell me, what's the best part about life after 50, my friend?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm feeling it a little more, but I do think because I've worked through the things that I've worked through, I'm living life a lot more freer, and I feel like I'm gonna go out with a bang.
Well, you only have one life to live, so you might as well maximize it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Desiree, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
The best way to connect with me is at my website. So that's www.arenewedcreation.com. And there is a buy it now button on there for my book too, if anyone is interested in that. But I have my blogs. You can sign up for my blogs or my monthly newsletter.
Fabulous. Well, I have to tell you that I find you to be an inspirational, resilient, and a thought-provoking person with a lot of knowledge and information to share with the rest of the world as we try to develop a new way forward, my friend. So I want to thank you for the good work that you do to inspire people and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Uh, Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. It was great being with you.